Hey guys, what's going on? So in this video today, we're going to go over what you should be looking for when you're deciding on who to T4, what characters to T4 and stuff. And before we even get into that, I just want to say that you should always prioritize T4ing your arena team first, then your U7 team or U6. Most likely you should focus more on U7 and then your war teams, just because war teams come and go, but basically your arena team is going to probably be there for a while, or aspects of it can be picked and choosed and moved around, and same with U7. So basically we're going to go over, basic, special, ultimate, and passive, and what you should be looking for and stuff. So I'm going to show off a couple of examples of T4s that I've done or that I'm thinking about doing, and basically we're just going to go through order, like the order of basic, special, ultimate, passive. So we're going to start with Black Bolt, and basically when it comes to basics, what I look for when it comes to new characters is I always want to see a like 50%, 40% damage increase, and then something else with it. So Black Bolt's, his basic right here that will do 50% more damage, which is high, not super high, but it's good enough, it's average, and then it's also going to clear 2 positive effects. So this is a prime example. Basically, if I don't have it there, it's only going to flip 1 negative effect on and clear 1 positive effect. So right now, it's if the primary target has slow, he'll flip 2 negative effects on himself, which doesn't really happen much in arena. But if you're using Inhumans, it does happen a lot. But basically, clearing 2 positive effects and then 50% more damage. So that's an example. I'm also going to go over. There's also Colossus. I want to go over, for example. Now Colossus, what he does is, again, it's 50% damage, and he's going to apply offense down for 2 turns as opposed to just 1 turn. So I like these basics that extend debuffs or extend buffs from 1 turn to 2 turn or higher than that. There's also, for example, there's Symbiote Spider-Man. I believe his basic does extra damage, and along with that, it does, I believe, defense down for 2 turns. So yeah, again, 20% damage is not great. I don't know why it's shown Colossus's thing, but it does go from, he does attack multiple targets, so that's probably why it's a little bit lower. But again, the defense down is crazy. So those that don't know, I believe the boost are that defense. If your character has defense up, they take 50% less damage. I don't know what the defense down is. So basically, I would assume it's 150% more damage, and then offense up, I believe you do 150% more damage, and then offense down, you do 50% less damage. So that's kind of why I like that stuff. So that covers basic. Another thing that you could look forward in basic is calling assist, but I will warn about that. For example, you have Proximus and Corvus that I believe if you T4 their basic, they will call assist from each other. If you T4 Proxima basic, she'll call assist from Corvus. It's not like you do one and you get both, but I believe if you T4, yeah, her basic always gain an assist from Corvus, as opposed to the 50% chance now that there is now. I will say with Ironheart that she doesn't need a T4 in her basic to call Iron Man, I believe. I might be talking out of my butt right now, but yeah, so her just level 6 always gains an assist. So they might be going away from you needing T4 characters. So like upcoming characters might just genuinely call assists as opposed to needing a T4 that. So that does it for basic. Again, you want to look for either crazy amounts of damage, so probably 50% or above, and then something along the lines of something additional that they do. So next up we have special. So I'm going to go over certain characters, and specials are weird because all basics do damage. So specials, it depends on the context, it depends on what you're doing. But for example, I want to talk about Invisible Woman. So basically, she's going to, with this basic, she's going to clear 2 negative effects from self and all allies and apply stealth to self and all allies, but she'll keep 1 out basically. So I like this because it clears 2 negative effects from the whole team, which is always great, and it'll apply stealth to herself and all allies, but it does leave 1 character who has the highest health out. And what I like for him in specials, again, it depends on who it is. So like Ultron, you T4 his special, he always calls in 3 bots. I'm trying to think. It really does depend, because like either it's an attack ability or something. So like for specials that are clearing buffs or applying buffs or anything like that, I want something that will either clear the whole team from buffs, clear all buffs from the team, clear all buffs from a certain character, apply debuffs to the other team, basically something like that. And then if it's not something like this, for example, we can go back to Black Bolt, either like high damage, high piercing damage, which piercing damage goes through armor. So like right now, this is 100% more damage to primary target. So this attack does 600% damage. So this is a high range that you should want to go for. Another example that I have is I want to talk about Mr. Sinister. So again, you want to go for piercing damage. But Mr. Sinister, this gene therapy, I want to talk about like healers, for example. So this is going to spread all positive effects, as opposed to, I believe it was just 3 random positive effects. So if you get a bunch of positive effects on Mr. Sinister and can apply to the whole team, that's great. It also does 500 healing. That's not super crazy, but there's also 5% healing. So when it comes to healing, you don't want to do base healing, because let's look at Mr. Sinister's health, for example. 500 of his health right now is less than a percentage, I believe, if I'm doing that mental math right. But like I want to talk about, for example, another special I believe that is good is Emma Frost. She's like one of these characters that you might possibly T4 all of her abilities, but her upcoming, she's going to clear all negative effects from self and all allies and apply immunity to self and all. This is great. Basically, if you can clear the whole team from debuffs or anything like that, that's what I like. So again, with these, you want to either purge the whole team from buffs or have high damage. So 60% probably piercing, and then 70% regular damage when it comes to that stuff. So let's talk about ultimates. Quite a lot of ultimates. So most ultimates do damage or they're mass heals. But for example, let's talk about Proxima. So with Proxima, why I like her ultimate, I haven't T4'd it because I really do need to invest in Black Order a little bit more. But why I like Proxima's ultimate is because it reduces speed bar by 25%. So along with the 25% that's already there, it's going to reduce a character's speed bar by 50% total, and it does 440% piercing. So basically, in a game like this that is turn meter based, reducing speed bar or affecting speed bar is crazy. So I would always recommend too that if you see something when it comes to speed bar, if it's over 5%, it's probably pretty worth looking into. And also I want to say that basically, if you were on the edge on who to go for, I would check out other people, because there's plenty of people that do in-depth looks at what T4s to go for and such. But and there's plenty of infographics and stuff. So just double check. I mean, it probably won't take you a second, or it'll probably take you a second or two to double check. So I don't think it'll be too risky to do that. But let's look at, for example, someone who doesn't have a someone who doesn't do damage on their ultimate. Invisible Woman. She's going to always apply offense down for 2 turns as opposed to just 1 turn, and that's going to go to all enemies. And then she also does a 10%, does a barrier for 10% of her health. So basically, yeah, I like, again, it's the whole thing. Either it's going to, probably needs to be a 2-turn debuff or buff, or huge amounts of damage. And then, for example, we also have Symbiote Spider-Man. I believe his stuns and then also applies 2 slows to the whole team, if I remember. Yeah, apply slow to targets for 2 turns. So that is also good. And then let's look at Black Bolt, for example, because he's a big damage dealer too. And then, yeah, this is 120% damage to all targets. So yeah, basically when it comes to, again, you just want to be probably 50% damage, 2-turn buff or debuffs, all that stuff. So let's look at passives. Passives are a little bit more tricky when it comes to arena and when it comes to raids, because you do need to understand that this passive might be good on this team alone, but when it comes to your raid team, you really don't need it. But again, for the most part, I just typically go first up. So let's look at Phoenix. So Phoenix is kind of a loaded gun because she has 2 forms. So Phoenix Rising, this is pretty decent as itself. So what I like to, I have like a 20% rule that I kind of set in my head, where 20% you need to buff them 10% one way or 10% the other, or 20% the whole. So for example, she's going to give 10% max health and then 10% damage. So that equals 20% of an increase, I guess, if that makes sense. So that's kind of my rule. If I see 20%, I'm like, okay, that's a decent passive. Let's look at her summon too. Basically, when she comes in from dying, she's also going to apply defense down for 2 turns. This is probably the bigger part of the passive, but having that other extra health and extra damage is good as well. I will say for her vitality drain, because this is a rare thing, but basically I did this. I know a lot of people don't necessarily recommend it. It's probably a good T4, but not necessary. But when it comes to Dark Dimensions 3, stealing an extra 5% health is crazy. So I just want to point that out as well. But yeah, that's an example of one passive. Let's look at, we're going to look at Symbiote Spider-Man again. So yeah, and I use Symbiote Spider-Mans for U7. And Perfect Host basically is going to gain 20% max health. So there's your 20% total. So that's like, again, my 20% rule. Anything over 20% I think is solid. And then let's look at, I want to look at Invisible Woman and talk about Ebony Maw too, and why those passives aren't passives that you would go for. So Invisible Woman, her passive is going to do, you know, basically her, for those that don't know, she attacks those that attack her team, and she's going to do 50% more damage with that. But when you do this passive, she's only going to apply 10% max health. So again, that's not that 20% increase that I like. So if it was 10% max health and then 10% damage, or 10% max health and 10% resistance, or 10% max health and 10% focus, that's what I would like to see. But again, this 10% is, you know, it is what it is. But I will say, you know, with characters that you do use in Arena and U7, this 10% health could actually help me win a match. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but again, basically my rule book is the 20%, if that makes sense to you guys. So let's talk about Ebony Maw too. Ebony Maw, he's a character that, you know, you T4 his special and his ultimate, but not his passive. And it's just because all he does is give 10% resistance to Black Order and Thanos allies. So that's not necessarily bad, but it's not outstanding. It's not anything great. And again, it doesn't hit my 20% rule. So that's going to do it for this video. I hope that made sense. Let me know if you think I should add more rules. For example, when it comes to piercing damage, I know X23 does a lot of piercing damage. Yeah, 20% piercing on all attacks. Always flip stealth on each attack. That's not bad. Again, piercing damage, I just like. This one would not be a bad T4. Again, it's over like the 50% damage threshold, or it doesn't also have something along with it. So like her basic, always gaining evade wouldn't be bad, and the 50% piercing isn't bad either. But I don't know. I might go for that. But again, I don't really T4 my war teams. And then this fill speed bar by 20% and gain 20% focus for self. Yeah, this is a huge boost. I really don't look at the war boost and stuff, just because war is great and all, but the long term, well, I guess long term of the game, it does affect it. But basically what I care most about is U7 and Arena, and being able to maximize my output when it comes to that. So that's why I really don't like the super big war buffs and stuff. I don't really prioritize, but I know other people do. Again, it is how many T4s you're getting or whatever. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video. Let me know if I should add more stuff, if I should consider more T4s, if there's something you feel like I miss when it comes to my classification. So basically, when it comes to T4, the 20% rule with passives, either a 20% buff. For example, there's Yo-Yo, who always applies offense down. That's just like a certain situational type of thing, where that's not necessarily the 20% buff, but always applying offense down is crazy. And then when it comes to damage, I like damage plus something else, or high 50, high 60% damage range or higher. And then also clearing all buffs, applying a ton of debuffs, 2-turn debuffs, 2-turn buffs, that type of stuff. So that's what you kind of want to look for when it comes to T4s. Again, let me know if I should add more. Let me know if you want to see all my T4s. It'll take me a while to get that all together, because I do actually have a couple. I need to find them and get them all together. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. On this channel, I do guides, I do giveaways, I do orb openings, I do news, I do all sorts of Marvel Strike Force stuff. So you want to make sure you're subscribed, hit the like button, share it, all that good stuff that everyone else tells you to do. And that's gonna do it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.